Welcome to the Outdoor View, the place where we educate, connect, and learn to protect our outdoor traditions. I'm your host for today, Bill Gaines, and I have the pleasure of being with Lori Jacobs, president of the California Houndsmen for Conservation. Good morning to you, Lori. How are you doing today?
I'm good. And you, Bill?
I'm doing great, thank you. And thank you as well for taking the time to join us today. I'm really excited about helping to educate our viewers on some of the fantastic stuff the California Houndsmen for Conservation are doing for wildlife conservation in general, and also in terms of protecting a strong future for our outdoor traditions. Let's start by you telling us a little bit about yourself.
I was born and raised in Northern California in a little town called Clipper Mills, which is northeast out of Oroville, California. I come from a hunting family. We hunt pretty much everything. My dad was born and raised in Porterville, California. He had hounds. Then my sister, Linda Chase, she had hounds. She lived in Exeter, California. And I got my first hound puppy from her when I was 12 years old. That's how my addiction got started. And that I've had him ever since. My husband and I have continued the line of hounds that Linda started over 40 years ago. We still have these dogs in our kennels now and just truly enjoy it.
Yeah, I've known you long enough, Lori, to know that it's this absolute passion for you and for Keith and for your entire family, but not just you. There is a variety, many members of the California Houndsmen for Conservation. You're all alike. You have an absolute passion for hound hunting, and I respect that. I think that's fantastic.
It is. Some people call it a sport. Some people call it a pastime. But for most of the hound hunters, it is a passion.
Absolutely.
And it is total dedicate. You have to have total dedication to it. It's not just something you can do, take your dogs out of the kennel and do a few months out of the year. It's something you have to work at 365 days of the year.
Yeah, and you guys certainly do that. Tell us a little bit about the California Houndsmen for Conservation. You've been around for several decades, right?
Yeah, it was established in 1972 by a gentleman named Sam Baker, who is out of Fresno, California. And he started it. It was going to be called the California Bear Hunters, but then he decided to call it California Houndsmen for Conservation because what he wanted to do was to conserve the hound hunting in the state, and which we've been trying to do ever since.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no question about that. You guys have fought many battles, since then, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. The one thing that I think I respect most about California Houndsmen for Conservation is you are very politically active. I mean, you recognize that if we're going to maintain a strong future for our hunting heritage, including hunting with hounds here in California, not to mention nationwide, that you've got to be active in front of the state legislature, you've got to be active in front of Congress, you've got to be active in front of the Fish and Game Commission where regulations are defined and so forth. And CHC is all of that.
Yeah, it keeps us busy. That's for darn sure.
It sure does. But not only are you active, but you've also been very successful. Now, you are the California Houndsmen for Conservation, right? Obviously, you're centered here in the state of California, which is the tip of the spear, as they say, when it comes to the battle to protect the future for hunting. The anti-hunting sentiment in this state, is more organized and more prolific, if you will, than anywhere else in the nation, basically because of the demographics of California. We're 80% urban folks that don't know anything about hunting, don't know anything about the positive and lead role of hunters and wildlife conservation. They don't know anything about that because a lot of them have had absolutely no exposure to it throughout their lives. Like you and I both were raised, in hunting families. And so we were exposed to it. And we certainly have an appreciation for the good things that hunters do out there when it comes to wildlife conservation. But those that are born and raised in urban areas to no fault of their own. I mean, they haven't had any exposure to it, so they're automatically assuming the worst, reading about the bad portions of hunting in the paper, reading about poaching, so on and so forth, and not learning about the positive things. So you fought many battles. CHC has fought many battles in California over the years, and your history of success is really quite impressive. Let's talk about a few of those. The one thing that immediately comes to mind for me was the ability for the Houndsmen, California Houndsmen of Conservation, to go in front of the Fish and Game Commission and to change the regulation that previously had prohibited the use of GPS collars on hounds in the state of California. Can you tell us a little bit about that battle? That was a huge win for you guys, just what, 4 or 5 years ago?
Yeah, I believe it was 5 years ago now, and it was like you say, it was a huge win. It took lots and lots of meetings, lots and lots of time and effort put into educating people so they could see exactly why we wanted these collars, why we needed the collars, and letting them know that those collars were not going to make the dogs any better. It was for the simple fact it was for the safety, the recovery, and peace of mind that we knew we would be going home with our dogs at the end of the day, keeping them off of private property, I mean, and so on and so on. I even invited one of the commissioners, as you know, Anthony Williams, to go hunting. And, people thank me to this day and say that was one of the greatest things I ever did. Well, and I try to tell them, no, it was one of the greatest things Anthony Williams could do by accepting and taking time out of his day. He flew up here, rented a car because he was from LA area, drove to Calusa, went and spent the whole day in the field with me and to see exactly how the dogs work. We caught numerous raccoons, saw lots and lots of different types of wildlife that day. And he had a blast. And it sold him on the hounds, and the hounds sold themselves. And he was a diehard believer, and he went to bat for us in the commission. And I truly believe that he's one of the main reasons that we got it passed.
There's no question about that. And I have a tremendous respect for Anthony Williams to this day for him doing that. I remember at the end of that day, Lori, you called me to tell me about your hunt with Anthony. And just the respect I have for Anthony for, like you say, taking the time on his own dime, flying up here, renting a car, meeting you out in the field, because he wanted to learn firsthand what happened out there in the field when people are hunting with hounds. You guys have fought so many battles over the years with animal rights folks coming after you, trying to prohibit, whether it be the hunting of bears with hounds, or in many cases, flat out hunting of mammals across the board with hounds. And I know that California Houndsmen for Conservation had offered to take the proponents of that anti-hunting legislation out in the field countless times to show them what really happens out there. And they've never been willing to take us up on any of those offers. And Anthony did, and it made a huge difference.
Well, like I told him that day, he asked me, he goes, have you guys ever offered to take hunting? I said, people have offered to take them hunting and let them see how the hounds work. I said, but they will not go. And he goes, I wonder why that is. I said, I know why it is, because they don't want to see the truth.
That's exactly right. Yeah, some of the falsehoods, some of the lies, if you will, that we have faced, you have faced in front of the state legislature, in front of the Fish and Game Commission, wherever laws or regulations are being defined when it comes to the ability to use hounds for hunting. I mean, it's amazing the stuff that they'll say out there about what they want to portray happens in the field. That's not what happens in the field.
No.
And so, like you say, for them not to be willing to go out there and actually see, because it's not about what really happens out there. It's about what they want to fabricate happens out there.
And it's hurtful when they say that stuff because we know what happens. We know our dogs. We know our dogs are nothing like they portray them to be,
Right.
and that we aren't like they portray us to be, you know. So
Well, again, tremendous amount of respect for Anthony Williams for his willingness to do that, and the respect that he had amongst his fellow commissioners on the California Fish and Game Commission. And he was willing, because that was a several meeting process to get that regulation changed to allow the use of GPS collars on hounds. And
years.
absolutely it was. And when the animal rights folks would testify in opposition to that in front of the Fish and Game Commission, I remember several times Anthony from the dais was more than willing to set the record straight when they would try to provide some false statements, if you will, about what happened out in the field, and he would correct them from the dais.
Yeah.
He did that.
And I remember you and I talking and saying we weren't going to say anything about him going with me out in the field.
Right.
And he brought it up on his own and told them. I mean, he went into like 20 minutes spill up there about how he went and what he saw, and that they needed to go out in the field with some of us and see the truth.
Absolutely. I always thought it was crazy because it was illegal, if you will, to put a GPS collar on a hound. And hounds are going to pursue whatever species you may be hunting. And like you say, they may want to cross roads. They may want to go onto private property. There's a lot of ways they can get in trouble. And
yeah,
for houndsmen to not have the ability to put a GPS collar on their hounds, not because you want to make hunting easier. That's not it at all. It was so that you could ensure the safety of that hound and make sure that you go home with that hound at the end of the day. And that's the whole reason for the GPS. It had nothing to do with houndsmen sitting in their trucks having a beer while their dogs were out, pursuing whatever game you were pursuing for the day, which is what.
Wait till they were treed and then go find them while we were drinking in a bar.
Right. That's some of the things that they would say in front of the Fish and Game Commission. Same stuff that they've said in front of the state legislature in the past. And it's just not true. And
doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't work that way at all. But it's always been illegal for if you had a springer, let's say you're an upland game bird hunter and you like to hunt, pheasants, quail, whatever, and you've got a springer or some other type of upland game dog, you could always put a GPS collar on them. There was no regulation against that. But there was a regulation against putting one on a hound, which is a species which really needed a GPS collar. And I've often said, if you needed to put a GPS collar on your springer when you're chasing pheasants, you need a new springer.
Exactly.
I mean, it's just crazy. You would never need a GPS collar on any type of a decent bird dog. That's exactly right. But they were legal there, but they weren't legal for use on hounds, which I always thought was crazy. And kudos to the Fish and Game Commission for legalizing that a few years ago. And it was CHC that brought that to them, like you say, countless meetings with the Department of Fish and Wildlife, with the Fish and Game Commission and others, and countless hours of testimony, and you got it done. You guys have got several other victories that are worth spouting about as well. There was legislation introduced here in our state capitol less than a year ago that would have banned bear hunting across the board. Any type of bear hunt. You guys took the lead in squashing that bill. You pounded the author of that bill, the senator out of San Francisco, only Senate district in California that doesn't have a single bear in it, right? He's the one who introduced it, and you guys hit him so hard as soon as that bill hit the ground that he pulled it in a week before it was even brought to a hearing. So a fantastic win for CHC, and frankly, a lot of our conservation partners to kill that bill so quickly. That was quite a victory. And our hope is that we killed that bill so effectively that no other author will be willing to pick that up anytime soon, because we know that the animal rights folks would very dearly like to prohibit bear hunting here in California. And they're not going to go away when it comes to trying to push legislation.
which is ridiculous because there are so many bears in this state.
Absolutely. They're at historical highs to the point where they're encroaching in suburban areas, of all kinds of public safety incidences on a daily basis now. I mean, bears need to be controlled. They're an apex predator. I mean, and hunting is the only way you're going to keep their populations in check. And for some of the animal rights folks out there to try to take that away from not only hunters, but away from the Department of Fish and Wildlife as a wildlife management tool is a shame, because we definitely need to maintain the ability to hunt bears.
And the most effective tool was already taken away in 2012.
In 2012, Senate Bill 1221 prohibited the use of hounds for hunting bears and bobcats in our state. That was a huge loss, not only for bear hunters, not only for houndsmen, but for our ability to manage bear populations in the state.
Yes, it was absolutely a huge loss. And since it happened, the quota has not been reached. The bear population continues to increase. Bears continue to cause tons of problems in this state. The big boars are pushing out the subadult males down to where into a different territory. So when we as hound hunters used to hunt them, be able to hunt them, we mainly focused on the big adult boars, male bears. And when we'd take out one of those, it opened up an area for 3 or 4 juvenile males. And they weren't getting pushed into the cities to get in trouble.
You mentioned the quota, Lori. Let's talk about that a little bit. For those that don't know, the quota for bear harvest in California by hunters is 1,700 a year. It's been like that for a long, long time. And prior to the passage of Senate Bill 1221 in 2012 that prohibited the use of hounds to hunt bears, I mean, we would hit that quota pretty much every year, with hunting with hounds being the primary tool for a successful bear hunt. Well, even prior to the elimination of hounds for the pursuit of bears, the Department of Fish and Wildlife realized that 1,700 annual quota wasn't high enough, because the bear population was continuing to grow rapidly every year. Even with us harvesting 1,700 bears, they tried to bump it up several times in front of the Fish and Game Commission, but each time the animal rights folks showed up in droves. We didn't have a very friendly commission at the time. And the commission denied the department's request to increase that annual quota. So it's still at 1,700 today. Meanwhile, in 2012, they took away the ability to hunt bears with hounds. And since then, I think we're averaging about maybe 900 to 1,000 bears harvested statewide.
I don't even know if it reaches 1,000 anymore.
But I mean, if populations of bears were increasing out of control prior, to the elimination of the use of hounds to hunt bears, we know what's happening now. Now that we're not even coming close to that quota, the population of bears is really spiraling out of control. And now we're seeing all these problems in the suburban areas and so forth. So I guess it would be safe to say that the number one goal of the California Houndsmen for Conservation is to get the ability to use hounds to hunt bears back, correct?
Absolutely.
And I know we've made a run at that before. You guys sponsored some legislation, I want to say about 6-7 years ago, that would have given counties the ability to make the call as to whether or not hounds should be legal to pursue bears in their county. Is that correct?
Yeah, Assembly Bill 2205.
It's interesting that I mentioned that 80% of California's public lives in the urban areas, and they elect 80% of our legislative representatives at the state capitol. And of course, with that overwhelming majority of urban legislators at the capitol, I mean, they effectively have the ability to dictate rural lifestyles. And in my opinion, anyway, I think it's just wrong for people that aren't dealing with a problem with bears to be making the decision as to how bears should be managed. I mean, I think if the shoe were on the other foot and the rural the rural population of California was driving decisions which impact the urban folks, I don't think that would go over very well. But that's exactly what's happening, when it comes to the folks in the urban areas defining rural lifestyles and rural public safety and so forth.
Pretty much the majority of all the counties were for it, but yet you take it to legislature and it gets voted down.
Yeah, I think that's something that needs to be brought to the legislature, especially now. Again, I think that was 6 or 7 years ago. And with the bear population increasing steadily, significantly, annually here in the state of California. And as a result, the public safety incidences and public interface with bears and so forth are increasing. The number of them that are being hit by cars and
Yeah, hazards on the highway. Yes, exactly.
yeah, I think now that the public is becoming more aware. I mean, heck, bears are on the news every night. I mean, it's hard to turn on the local news. I don't care where you're at. And there's a bear in somebody's swimming pool or breaking into somebody's house or in somebody's backyard or in a tree in somebody's yard. I mean, it's on the news every night. I think the more that the public is presented with that information, the more over time that they're going to realize that we need to step up the management of bears here in California. And we don't want to do it via depredation. We can never do it via depredation. I mean, hunting, and hunting and with hounds, which, as you mentioned, is the most effective tool, is the only way they're going to be able to successfully maintain healthy bear populations here in the state.
Yeah, and I am most all of your hound hunters are ethical hunters, and I'm pretty much against depredation hunts because you cannot use the meat. So
True story. You mentioned bear meat, and I know that it's your absolute favorite meal. It's like wild game in general. I can't tell you the number of people I've talked to that oh my God, wild duck tastes terrible, or venison, oh that's terrible. And bear meat, oh my God, how can you eat that stuff? Telling you what, you can take a ribeye and you can screw it up, right? I mean, wild game, it's our favorite delicacy here in our household. I know it's the favorite delicacy in your house.
mm-hmm.
Bear meat is fantastic. You just got to know how to cook it, right? It's like any other meal. Wild game's not very forgiving, bear meat especially, but boy, it really is tasty. You just gotta know what you're doing.
Yep, it's my favorite meat.
I know it is. How do you normally go about preparing it? What's your favorite, meal when it comes to bear meat?
I either flour it and fry it or put it in a crock pot. With potatoes, carrots, cream of mushroom soup, garlic. The main thing with bear meat is, with me, to bring out the flavor, is garlic salt or garlic, anything. If you you can pit barbecue it and you put fresh garlic in it, like the roast, you cut slices and put fresh garlic in it and then wrap it with bacon. Ugh, it's so good.
Let's take a break. I got to go get something to eat. That sounds so good. Yeah, you can't go wrong with bacon and garlic, on bear meat. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But hound hunting in our nation goes way back. I mean, George Washington, father of our country. I mean, he was a hound hunter.
And a lot of presidents that had hounds that hunted.
I know Thomas Jefferson was another one. Theodore Roosevelt.
Yep, Teddy Roosevelt. That's what the teddy bear was named after, because he bear hunted with hounds, and so they named the teddy bear after him.
So needless to say, there's a long, long, proud tradition of hound hunting in America, going back to our forefathers and even some of our more recent presidents. I mean, they were proud hound hunters. I know you're a proud hound hunter as well. I mean, that history is amazing. It's just too bad that in California anyway, and in some other states, that some of the the younger generations, if you will, have lost sight of that proud history.
It is. It's sad to see that they attack the hound hunters and the trappers. I call us the stepchildren of the hunting communities. because it's always after the trappers, always after the hound hunters, when in fact, back in time, that's how people fed their families, you know, put meat on the table, was trapping and hound hunting. That that's how they took care of their families.
Right. And like you mentioned just a few minutes ago, bear meat. I mean, there's not an ounce of any bear you harvest that goes to waste. I know that all goes to food for your family, and the same applies to all the other houndsmen. But I know everything that they harvest, they put on the table for their families, which is something to be proud of as well. To go out and harvest your own meal like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we talk about the proud history of hound hunting going way back to the birth of our nation. You know, and we talked about the fact that hunting with hounds, especially when it comes in the case of bears, is a great wildlife management tool. But hound hunting is also really the only type of hunting that I'm aware of that is catch and release, right? I mean, talk a little bit about that. What are some of the benefits of hunting with hounds, whether you're pursuing raccoons, bears, or what have you? I mean, when it comes to the catch and release aspect of it.
Well, it is the only type of hunting that I know that is catch and release. You do not have to take a gun with you at all. And where a lot of people, we take a lot of kids hunting with us. That's the main reason I like to do what I do. I mentor, I take a lot of youth. And some families don't feel comfortable with their kids being out in the field with guns. I'm like, well, guess what? They can go and we don't have to have a gun because we don't hardly ever take a gun with us. We just go with the dogs, you tree the animal, you get the dogs, you walk away. The animal stays up the tree and comes down, goes about its business once you're gone, and lives to see another day.
You know, one of the other falsehoods that the animal rights folks have put out there when trying to propose anti-hound hunting bills or anti-hunting bills in general, is that these animals, they go up the tree, they get stressed out. I mean, all these types of things, which is absolutely not true. I've been on hound hunts for bears, and those bears go up a tree and they'll take a nap while they're up there. I mean, that's something that instinctively they've done for centuries.
Yeah, most of the time you would get to the tree and they would be asleep. But
Right.
that was their instinct, was to climb a tree to get away from anything, wolves, coyotes, and they'd go up there and they'd go to sleep. And then when the whatever was after them was gone, then they come back down and go about their way. And that's the same thing with any animal that climbs a tree. They go up there to get away from stuff. Raccoons and fox and stuff like that. They climb trees all the time to get away from coyotes,
Right.
and they don't have a problem with it. They go up there, go to sleep, or just hang out until the stuff's gone, and then come down and go on doing whatever they're going to do.
Well, you mentioned the benefits of using hounds when it comes to introducing youth, if you will, or even adults, to hunting without having to actually harvest an animal. You don't even have to take a gun, as you mentioned. But one of the other benefits is, if you are hunting, if you do have let's say bear hunting, if you had a bear tag and it was legal to use hounds in California, one of the beauties of that is that bear will go up a tree. That'll allow you to get a close look at that bear and define whether or not you want to take it or not, whether or not it's a sow with cubs, or whether or not it's a nice boar that you want to harvest. I mean, what are the benefits of being able to take a close look at bears when it comes to
It
pursuing
is,
them?
or any animal, really. I mean, you can pretty much sex any animal if you can get a good look at them in the tree. With a varmint, a raccoon, or a fox, if it's a bushy tree, sometimes you can't get a good look. But a bigger animal, a bear, you can tell well, after you've done it for so many years, you can pretty much just look at their heads and stuff and tell whether it's a boar or a sow. But you can get a good look and you can tell if it's like say for instance, if it's a sow with babies, has cubs, you can tell if they're lactating.
Mhm.
And 90% of the time they will have the babies in the tree with them. They usually put the babies up the tree above them for safety, and then they're down on a lower branch. But you can usually always see that they are lactating.
Mhm.
And because sometimes they will not have them with them. The babies will be in their den or whatever, and they'll be out foraging and or they'll put them up another tree and they'll go up a different tree, to try to lure whatever away from their babies.
Mhm.
And so, but you can always, see if they're lactating, if they have teats and have milk. And so, but they have a totally different shape of head. You can just look at them and it's like, yep, that's a girl. So,
And if you're hunting bears and you're not using hounds, I mean, you're going to have to harvest that bear on the ground, right? And 99% of the time anyway, and that may be a sow with cubs, and you may not even know it until it's too late.
no. And that's why there's a lot of talk in this state about bringing a spring season to this state. I'm totally against a spring season.
There you
And
are,
the
as am I.
main,
And that's one of the things that I really respect about the California Houndsmen for conservation. I mean, truly, your number one goal is conservation. If somebody were to propose a spring season, you'd be the first ones out of the block opposing that proposal. And I think the same to be said if somebody were to propose hunting bears over bait here in California, which is
no,
also currently illegal. You would oppose that as well, right?
no, I would oppose that also. Yeah.
Absolutely. One of the other benefits of using hounds outside of what you just talked about, as far as being able to identify a sow with cubs or an immature bear that you prefer to pass on. I mean, one of the other benefits of it is if that bear is treated, it gives you a clean, humane, lethal shot. Every ethical hunter out there, their number one goal, regardless of what species you may be in pursuit of, is to get a good, clean, lethal shot, if you will. Whether you're hunting ducks, you want to get those ducks in as close as you can, doves, whatever, deer. I mean, you want as effective and as clean of a shot as you can possibly get. And there's absolutely no better way to do that when it comes to bears than to have them up a tree. There's actually two other big benefits of using hounds to pursue mammals here in the state. And one is research, and the other one is depredation. Let's talk a little bit about the research front, for example. Um, Hounds are a critical tool when it comes to mountain lion research, correct?
Yes, they are. In fact, one of our board members, Dan Tishner, has done a lot of research for this state. And down at UC Santa Cruz, they have used his hounds, Dan and his hounds, to collar numerous mountain lions and have done research on them. And when he first started that, they were very hesitant about it and thought it was going to harm the animals and stuff. And after doing it, they they have even came in. Some of them have walked the hallways of the Capitol with us because their minds have been changed.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to expand a little bit on that, because I've actually worked with Dan down at our state capitol and had two of California's leading mountain lion researchers walk the halls with us, in an effort to try to get legislation introduced that would allow the use of hounds for pursuing bears.
Hmm.
Because as and as Dan certainly would tell the people we're meeting with, hunting of bears with hounds was the best way, if you will, to train dogs to pursue mountain lions. Because you can't go out and just run mountain lions with hounds here in California. That's been illegal for a long time.
Yeah, Dan, in fact, has bought a place in New Mexico,
Right.
so he can actually run his dogs.
right. And then when the researchers here in California need help tracking, a problem line, or tracking one that's collar needs to be,
Yeah.
replaced, or whatever, they call Dan, and like I say, that those researchers have joined us in the halls of the state capitol more than once, and trying to get the ability to use hounds for hunting bears back so they can maintain, dogs for the pursuit of mountain lions here in the state for research purposes. In addition to the benefits of using hounds for research for mountain lions, or for research on bears for that matter, I mean, hounds play a critical role when it comes to finding problem lions or problem bears that are causing public safety concern, right? I mean,
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about that. If a lion or a bear comes into a suburban area and creates problems, maybe kills somebody's pet, or breaks into their house, or whatever, right? I mean, and then that animal runs off. I mean, the beauty of having dogs to pursue them is that you can put a dog on that track and they're going to find the guilty animal, right? I mean, so with, not only are they going to find that animal quickly so that whatever needs to be done with it can be done with it, but also they're going to find the right animal quickly. I mean, without the use of dogs, let's say the mountain lion shows up somewhere in a suburban area, and then, boom, no dogs. So, the wardens or whatever go out to try to find that cat. They may find a cat, but they'll never know if it's the right cat or not. And yet another benefit of being able to use hounds for pursuing bears and other mammals in this state. You've got a good stable, if you will, of hounds that can be called upon by the Department of Fish and Wildlife, or the local enforcement to help find that problem cat or bear, quickly before it creates additional problems. We've talked about a lot of the positive things that the California Houndsmen for Conservation have done for wildlife management, and for hound hunting, if you will. But what I love about you guys, is also the fact that you're all in on defense of all hunting, not just hound hunting. I mean, I can't think of a single proposal, anti-hunting, if you will, proposal that's come before our state legislature in the last, I've been working with you guys for about 20 years, that you guys, whether it had to do with doves, you helped kill a bill that would have outlawed dove hunting in California. That has nothing to do with hounds, right? I mean, we're facing some firearms legislation right now that would put a massive excise tax on the purchase of all guns and ammunition. You guys are one of the lead organizations in trying to fight that. I mean, you guys have been amazing when it comes to trying to help protect the future of our hunting traditions for all types of hunters, whether or not you use hounds or
Well, I've always been raised that strength comes in numbers. And just because I may not believe in one type of hunting doesn't mean I'm not going to back it.
I've seen your actions, over the past several years, and that California Houndsmen for Conservation have been there regardless of what type of hunting it's been, regardless of the venue, whether it be the state capitol, Fish and Game Commission, what have you. And not only in California. I mean, you guys have contributed significantly to battles in other states where the use of hounds has been challenged as well, right?
Yes, we have. We've helped out in Maine. We've helped out in Arizona. We've helped in Washington State. It's not that we have to, but I feel that we need to and should. So, and then I always feel that, you help others and they're going to help you.
Absolutely. And what happens elsewhere is coming to our backyard next, right? I mean, a lot of this stuff starts in California and travels its way eastward, but sometimes, some bad anti-hunting proposals start elsewhere and they'll find their way to California next. You guys, when you were created back in 1972, I mean,
Yep.
were set up very intelligently, I got to tell you. I mean, you're a wildlife conservation organization, but the way you're structured allows you to be much more politically active than your typical nonprofit conservation organization, if you will. You're structured in a way to where you can spend a fair amount of your money on policy issues, if you will. I mean, you've got your sportsmen's political victory fund, your SPVF, as you call it. Talk a little bit about that, because that's something that most conservation organizations don't have.
Yeah, our Sportsman's Political Victory Fund is a fund that people can donate to, and all the funds in that go for political, anything that arises that we feel that we want to spend money on to fight. We have sent money to Maine to help fight for their bear hunting. We sent money to the Wild Sheep Foundation in Arizona, because Arizona really didn't have a hound organization when they were fighting for the mountain lion hunting back there. And so I reached out to the Wild Sheep Foundation because they were fighting it big time, because they did not want to lose the use of hounds on the mountain lions, because it would have been detrimental to their sheep herd. So we reached out to them, and we donated to their organization to help fight that bill. They won. They kept their lion hunting, and we can take money out of the Sportsman's Political Victory Fund for those type of occasions. We can't spend it on just anything else, whatever we want. So
right, yeah, and most nonprofits, your typical 501c3, which you guys are not. You're a nonprofit, but you're not a 501c3. They're very limited in what they can spend on any kind of political advocacy. You guys are structured in a way to where you are not subject to those limitations. And that makes you a much more powerful voice here in the state of California. And certainly that's going to come in, and we're going to continue that fight to get the use of hounds back for hunting bears in this state. And that Sportsman's Political Victory Fund is going to play a major role in that. Lori, you guys are an all volunteer organization. You have no paid staff, correct?
No, we are all volunteer.
So every dollar that is donated to you or raised by you goes in some way towards protecting, not only the ability to use hounds, to hunt, but also to protect our general, hunting and shooting traditions here in California. You guys do your dinners.
We do dinners a year usually. Last year we didn't get to have any because of COVID. We had one here recently in October, and we will be having a dinner probably in April down towards Lodi, Stockton area somewhere.
Let's say somebody can't make it to one of your dinners, but they want to donate to the California Houndsmen for Conservation, or let's say they just want to check out your website and see what you're all about. What is that website?
It's CaliforniaHoundsmenforconservation.org.
Well, Lori, thank you for your time this morning. I really appreciate you joining us and helping to educate our viewers about the many positive things that California Houndsmen for Conservation is doing for wildlife conservation here in the state of California, and to promote a strong future for hunting as well. Thank you so much for all you do.
Thank you, Bill, for having me. I appreciate it.
You bet. So your website one more time?
CaliforniaHoundsmenforconservation.org.
Yeah, and I urge our viewers to check them out and donate if you can, because you guys are doing a great job, and every single penny that you raise is going on the ground in some positive way, for wildlife conservation and hunting here in California. And I want to thank our viewers as well for joining us today on The Outdoor View, the place where we educate, connect, and learn to protect our outdoor traditions. Check us out early and often at www.theoutdoorview.org.